As of the filming of this video, the Kyle Rittenhouse jury deliberations are still underway. By the time you watch this, there may have already been a verdict, but we have a major breaking story. MSNBC has been barred from the building. They will not be allowed into the building itself, not just the courtroom, the entire building, after a reporter was caught trying to expose the identities of the jurors. The judge named names. Now, at first, when this report came out, I assumed maybe this was Antifa, some far leftist who was trying to expose the jurors because this happened before. About a week ago, the judge said someone was at the bus pickup trying to photograph or film. I believe they were filming the jurors. The police, the bailiff, were instructed to have them delete the footage. The judge said that would suffice and we won't allow it to happen again. It happened again. This time, we now know it was MSNBC here trying to interfere in the Rittenhouse trial. Two people were named, James Morrison, a reporter. Now, another reporter on Court TV has confirmed he knows this individual. Says he was just doing his job, trying to do interviews with the jurors post-verdict. Another woman was named, Irene Bion, by the judge. She has since deleted all of her social media accounts, her LinkedIn accounts. Of course, all of this was archived. I have gone through the story so far. I have fact-checked to the best of my ability. And I can say that definitively, but my opinion is that MSNBC was actively trying to interfere in the trial and destabilize it. I do not believe this was just about we want to interview jurors. I believe they want to intimidate jurors. What you need to understand about MSNBC is that they're only airing the prosecution side for the most part. They've been running fake stories. They ran a video where they had a host claim that Gage Grosskreutz testified he had his hands up when Rittenhouse fired upon him. But in fact, the viral video shows Gage Grosskreutz told the defense that it was only after he pointed the weapon at Rittenhouse that he was fired upon. Now, perhaps there's some gap in testimony there, but at the very least, it warrants a correction, which did not occur. It appears to me that MSNBC, and most of you probably already know this, is biased and attempting to direct an outcome in this trial. By having a reporter go and do this, that could trigger a mistrial. And things aren't going too well for the prosecution. Now, the other day, we had a conversation that the length of the deliberation so far is potentially bad news for the defense because it could mean a hung jury. But Viva Fry, a lawyer, says it appears this might actually mean the state has not met its burden on guilt. Therefore, it's good news for the defense. Now, we don't know for sure, but the defense has requested a mistrial without prejudice. They want another go at this, and that says to me they actually may be worried. But what we're worried about, what may happen, what the verdict may be. But this, Donald Trump said the corporate press was the enemy of the people. And a lot of people said, hey, that's a little rough, And I agreed. I said, calm down. But this is shocking. This may be rogue elements within MSNBC, and I think it's probably fair to point out there's no high-ranking individual instructing MSNBC to destabilize, disrupt, and interfere in the Rittenhouse trial, but these two individuals did. This woman did. Well, I should say, it appears as such by the statements of the judge and the police investigation. That's what we know so far. We don't know the full details yet. Maybe they'll come out with some grandiose excuse as to how this occurred. But the police found a reporter following the jury bus, pulled him over. He blew a red light. This story is crazy. And I'm going to walk you through it. I'm going to be careful. I don't want to expose too much about the identities of these individuals. Simply, their names have already been released by the judge and are included in all these news reports. I'm not going to pull up their social media, but I have fact-checked it, and can confirm that these individuals exist, at least to the best of my understanding. And there's also conflict happening outside of the courthouse. This is where I think we're screwed, my friends. First, you all know that there's an ongoing crisis with the prosecution fabricating, manipulating evidence. I should say manipulating evidence. They made this compressed, cropped version to throw the defense off. But we also now know that the jury bus had to be covered up because the jurors are being driven through the protests. I don't know what the verdict will be. By the time this video is published, there may be a verdict, but let's just get into the news and talk about what MSNBC did. Now, Before we get started, head over to timcast.com, become a member, help support our work. Your membership helps fund all of the journalists that we have on staff. Journalists need to be paid, and it's not cheap. It's not cheap, especially if you want real talent. And we want to hire 2 more journalists. Become a member, and that's what we will do. Now, we're going to do it anyway, to be completely honest, but please become a member and help us just grow and expand. You'll get access to our members-only segments from all of our shows, notably the Timcast IRL podcast, which is a massive, massive library of all of these different people you know and love, talking behind the scenes, uncensored, about many ideas. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, share this show with your friends. Let's get into the insanity. MSNBC barred from Rittenhouse trial after producer caught following jury van. This is from mystateline.com. Reporting. Kenosha, Wisconsin. MSNBC has been barred from the courtroom in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial after a producer was stopped by police for following a van used to transport the jury. MSNBC News producer James Morrison was allegedly stopped by the police Thursday morning after running a stoplight while attempting to follow a van used to bring jury members to the courtroom. Kenosha police said Morrison was, quote, trying to photograph jurors. He was charged with several traffic violations, police said. Judge Bruce Schroeder said the jury van is equipped with blacked out windows, so the jury is prevented from being exposed to anything from one side or the other while being brought to the courthouse. I have instructed that no one from MSNBC News will be permitted in this building for the duration of the trial, Schroeder said. This is a very serious matter. I don't know what the ultimate truth of it is, but someone following a jury bus is an extremely serious matter and will be referred to the proper authorities for further action. Schroeder, declare a mistrial with prejudice for the love of all that is holy. This has gone beyond what a fair trial is supposed to be. The prosecution questioning the Fifth Amendment rights of the defendant on the stand in front of the jury. Even you said it was a grave constitutional violation, bringing up evidence that you said was not allowed in court. And now we know, at the very least, provided altered, low-resolution video to the defense, not providing the full high-res, uncropped version of the drone video that is part that you can argue is withholding evidence. But I would argue, based on the fact that ADA Krause on his laptop, it appears to show he has 2 different editing software, one for cropping video and one for transcoding and for compressing video. I believe this shows a reasonable person could say Krause edited down the video and sent a new rendered version to the defense so that they could not form an argument against the prosecution. And it was only because the defense showed the judge the video, not realizing it was different. And then this is really interesting because Binger made a point like, isn't ours clearer than this? And Krause says our version is clearer. He then said, no, it's just playing weird. Attorney Wisco said it doesn't work that way. And that's when the defense realized the prosecution had sent them manipulated evidence. Now we have MSNBC trying to photograph the jurors, and you know it. We have more breaking news. Apparently earlier, the prosecution was in the judge's chambers. We don't know what's going to happen, but there is a strong possibility, I would argue, that the judge, who has already said he's going to wait for the verdict from the jury, I believe the judge has decided he's going to wait to see what the jurors have to say, because if they say not guilty, then the motions for dismissal are moot. But if the jury comes back and says we're hung, meaning we can't agree, or that he's guilty, I believe the judge at this point now will intervene. But let me just tell you the state of our country. MSNBC, a massive corporate entity, caught trying to expose the jurors in possibly the highest profile case of our generation. I guess you can argue that our generation would be OJ. Maybe that was bigger, but this is serious. Let's take a look at what we got here. Let me pull up some of what we're seeing. I have this tweet thread from Matt Christensen. I pulled up Court TV. I heard the reporter discussing this, but Matt Christensen says, reporter on Court TV is saying he knows this Morrison dude on MSNBC. Implied confirmation of the bus following story. Court TV reporter says he can't think of a nicer guy who is just doing his job, instructed by someone higher up. Says it happens all the time and has for decades. says the guy was trying to book jurors for interviews post-verdict. Maybe. This man, according to the judge, said that he was working at the behest of a producer named Irene Bayan. Upon looking at the LinkedIn profile of Irene Bayan, she is a booking producer for for NBC News, probably overlapping with MSNBC. Perhaps. I don't think so. I don't believe it. It may be the case. You know, she is a booking producer. This guy's a reporter, though. He's a reporter. He's not a booking agent. She's the producer. Why was he following the jury bus and he blew a stoplight to try and keep up with them? Why did the police say they believed he was trying to photograph them? Because what likely was happening is, I think this guy may be using it as an excuse. Oh, yeah, no, the booking producer. The cultists are in the institutions. The call is coming from inside the house. There may be some activists on the jury. There are definitely activists at MSNBC. I mean, the whole thing is a joke. So you're not going to come to me and convince me that this was just all a big misunderstanding. You want to book the jurors, you wait until the verdict comes in and the trial's over, and then you can try and see if you can get some of the jurors. But for now, interfering with the jury bus when it already happened before, and the judge said it would be prevented from happening again, these are criminal actors, in my opinion, criminal. And I will stress, on November 9th, let me mute this. On November 9th, Rittenhouse judge says person caught filming jurors orders deletion along with new procedures. The new procedures didn't work. But you mean to tell me that these reporters didn't know about this? Of course they did. They knew, and they were still actively trying to get information to expose those jurors. Take a look at this from the Kenosha police. They say last night, a person who was alleging to be affiliated with a national media outlet was briefly taken into custody and issued several traffic-related citations. Police suspect this person was trying to photograph jurors. This incident is being investigated much further. There was no breach of security regarding the jury, nor were there any photographs obtained. This investigation remains active and open. No further information. Okay. Again, by now, there may be a verdict. I don't know. It's a nerve-wracking news cycle. You know, I'm sitting here with the live stream going with active commentary across the board because it could come in at any minute. But I produce on a schedule, and so I do the best I can. But this is something else beyond just what the verdict may be. This is a corporate press entity that we know lies, cheat, and steals. And now they're actively trying to interfere in our elections. You got me freaked out. Congratulations, MSNBC. This is, man, you know, I watched, we saw that, you guys saw that rant from me when the FBI raided James O'Keefe and was alleged to have then leaked their privileged legal communications with their lawyers to the New York Times. That was scary stuff. We know that federal law enforcement is going after opposition journalists under highly suspicious means. Even the ACLU is calling it out. Now, MSNBC taking this action. I'm not going to pretend that it was from the president of MSNBC or the CEO, but it just goes to show the corruption in these institutions. And I think it goes to show the corruption within our country and the struggle that we are now facing. I've got a lot more for you as well, though. We've got this tweet from, this thread from Andrew Havranek giving us some context. Now, this is interesting. He talks about the motion to dismiss, but I want to go to, I'm sorry, that's the motion to dismiss. I want to go to what he was talking about with the individual who came out and was filming the jurors. Okay, so Andrew says, according to the court TV engineer who has been running the feeds down in the media room, a man outside was pretending to be with MSNBC and NBC News. That person is now a guest of the county. Turns out that wasn't the case. Now, early on, we heard this, and it sounded like a far leftist and extremist was trying to sneak in. I tweeted, I deleted the tweet because I didn't know for sure. Didn't know what this meant. Now we know. It was MSNBC. Now, we do have some information that I want to read from Andrew on the mistrial, but I do want to talk a lot about, you know, what's going on. This is from Andrew, the same individual. He says, prosecutors said the jury only saw one version of the drone video. He says the motion and a motion for a mistrial with prejudice, the motion for a mistrial, still loom over this case as we await a jury verdict. If the jury reaches a not guilty verdict across the board, these motions are moot. This freaks me out. The prosecution has committed grave constitutional violations. You can see right over here, MSNBC is trending. The prosecutor has committed grave constitutional violations. That's a quote from the judge. MSNBC has directly interfered and been banned from the court. I believe the judge should make that motion now and let the American people know that if the extremists interfere and try to take away our fair trials, he will not allow it. By letting the jury come to a verdict, it will only get worse. If the jury comes back and says not guilty, he says, moot point. Basically saying all this malfeasance didn't matter. Is there going to be any repercussion for this? If the jury comes back and says guilty, and then he says, no, mistrial with prejudice, the left will say the judge interfered. He is biased and he is evil. And then we will get more chaos. Take a look at this. I know many of you probably saw this story, but this is the most important context as it pertains to what MSNBC did, because I believe a reasonable person would conclude, following the story from Fox News about the person filming the jurors, MSNBC was acting with malice. On November 9th, Fox News reported the Wisconsin judge overseeing the murder trial of Kyle Rittenhouse announced Tuesday that deputies had caught someone recording video of the jurors earlier in the day and would be taking new steps to ensure the incident did not happen again, in addition to ordering the person to delete the images. The jury entered the Kenosha County courtroom on Tuesday morning and was greeted by Judge Bruce Schroeder, who referenced the incident at the bus pickup this morning before the panel of jurors arrived. Schroeder had revealed that someone was spotted filming the group. I've been assured that the video which had been taken has been deleted, Schroeder told the jury, and new procedures are being instituted so that something like that should not reoccur. Well, technically, he's correct. They caught the guy before he filmed these jurors. But then I have to wonder, was the individual who filmed the jurors the same guy? Was it MSNBC trying to expose the identities of the jurors, knowing it would trigger a collapse, a destabilization in this trial? Dark times ahead indeed. But let me stress, the only reason these insane actions are even happening is because they're scared. The establishment, the powerful political elites, the corrupt cult members, the woke, they are scared. They know they're going to lose, so they have no choice but to just try and disrupt it to an extreme degree. So, Irene Bayan. I have this tweet from Ian Miles Chong. Is there any confirmation on this? Antifa Watch says MSNBC producer Irene Minju Bayan has nuked her Twitter account. I immediately searched for the social media of the individual and the judge named Irene Bayan. I found the account. I then saw that it was deleted. I believe it was her. I also have, I do have her LinkedIn pulled up. I'm not going to show it because I don't want to show her private details. Her name was released by the judge, but she does work for NBC News, booking producer, and she has been purging all of her socials. This is where it gets worse. From the Daily Mail. 2 arrested during violent clashes outside Kenosha court after Rittenhouse jury is sent home for a second night. Defense calls for mistrial over drone footage that was linchpin in prosecution case. 2 people were arrested. Fights were breaking out. People are bullhorning. Jack Posobiec. The left doesn't like him. He is a commentator and reporter. Used to work in intelligence. And he tweeted that a U.S. Marshal said that there are 2 jurors who are scared of the backlash who are hanging up the jury, who are holding it. A lot of people said there's no marshals in there, so that's clearly wrong. But, I take a look at the greater context, and I think it's plausible at the very least. I don't know if Jack has a good source, and one source typically isn't good enough for confirmation as far as I'm concerned, but take it with a grain of salt. The judge said that the bus windows are blacked out so that the jury won't be exposed to anything from one side or the other. That means the jury is driving through the protests. They certainly know why the windows are blacked out. They certainly know what's going on. They've certainly heard the bullhorning. They know that there are violent, angry people outside, people who just burned down their town not but a year ago. The people in question that they heard all the testimony on. Imagine sitting in a jury trial and the state and the defense come out and show you video of people burning down your city. And they tell you in great detail how it went down. And the only question you're there to answer is whether or not Kyle Rittenhouse was justified in self-defense or not. But you certainly know it's undisputed. These people were violent, had hurt others, and dare I say, there's a question of whether or not they would kill a 17-year-old. And then you learn those people are standing outside the courthouse, many of whom traveled across state lines. And you expect these jurors to come back and give you a verdict of not guilty? They are sweating bullets. The jury is probably freaked out and scared. And now MSNBC's barred because they were trying to expose their identities. These cult members are evil. It's beyond evil. It is corrupt. The arrests. You think the jury doesn't know about this? They're hearing this stuff. They're being shuffled into a court building with protests outside where people are getting arrested. There's some good news here. Viva Frei says, the fact that the jury has now entered day 3 of deliberations is the most undeniable evidence yet that the prosecution has not proven guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, and I completely agree. The jury need only 5 minutes to answer whether or not there was self-defense. And let's be reasonable, a couple hours. Now, the judge said if they come back and say this was not self-defense, they say that the intentional homicide is confirmed, then what happens is they go into deliberations, they say it's not self-defense, and they're done. There's no need to go over lesser charges for the most part if they're like, he wasn't defending himself, and they come right back out. Takes but a matter of minutes, I suppose. Now, if it is self-defense, they got to go through all the lesser includeds. Okay, if it wasn't intentional homicide, was it reckless endangerment, blah, blah, blah. And even then, they still have to consider self-defense. I don't necessarily agree with Viva. I mean, he's a lawyer, but he is in Canada. Mike Cernovich the other day said that he thinks it's indicative of a potential hung jury, and I believe that makes the most sense. If it was clear self-defense, they'd come out and say, look, the kid was defending himself, case dismissed. If it was not clear self-defense, they'd come out and say, he killed those people, lock him up. Instead, what we're getting is day 3 of deliberations. No, I think what's happening is there are people in there saying, please, they're going to riot. They're going to burn my home down. That's what I think is happening. I don't know for sure. I can't tell you, but I can tell you this. National Guard troops outside Kenosha are seen swinging batons and training with shields in preparation for violent protests as the world awaits a verdict in the Kyle Rittenhouse murder trial. The judge instructs the jury every day. Okay, we're breaking for the evening. Don't discuss the trial or the facts with anyone, even your fellow jurors. Avoid all news reports and go home, and we'll see you in the morning. What do you think happens when those jurors leave on a bus with blacked out windows as people scream outside the millimeter thick steel of their bus? You think they're sitting there going like, I have no idea what's happening. This is fine. Or do you think they're saying it is not discussing the trial to point out violent rioters are threatening our lives? Do you think when the jurors go home and they go to their families, they don't discuss this? Schroeder, I feel, is a good judge. He's done good. He's done well. And I mean good morally, too. He's done good morally, ethically. And he's done fine as a judge with a question of law, but boy, is he weak when it comes to what is happening all around us. Oh, don't discuss the trial. How could they not? There are violent rioters coming to your town. The National Guard is in the outskirts. These people can't even go to the store to buy milk without seeing National Guard with shields, probably. Or at least some of them. We're screwed. This is politics. This is political. We're not going to have a fair trial because there is an active conflict in this country. And that means Kyle Rittenhouse. You know what's really on trial? What's on trial right now is your right to defend your community. Now, Kyle Rittenhouse was 17. He could only have a rifle or a shotgun. He shouldn't have been out there. But you know what? The police weren't. There were police nearby doing nothing, just telling everyone to back off, keeping a perimeter, as rioters for several days burned down a city. Kyle Rittenhouse is on trial, sure. But what's really on trial is, will you be allowed to defend your community when the extremists show up? I want you to think about the future that we head to if the jurors lack the strength to say not guilty, or the judge lacks the strength to say mistrial with prejudice. The precedent is set in our culture. If you defend yourself, you will lose. Kyle Rittenhouse must win. Now imagine a future in 5 years. The ideologue left, now in extreme political power as they expand. And I'm not saying they're going to win. I'm just saying imagine this scenario. And a group of their culture police, the religious enforcers, show up to your home telling you that one thing or another you said was offensive on the internet, and you're going to be arrested, and you're going to be sent indefinitely to the gulag. Or 12 years hard labor. I'm being hyperbolic. Bear with me. Well, you'll know, no matter what I do, if I plead my innocence, if I state my case, I'll lose. If I try to resist, I'll lose. Because my neighbor won't stand up for me. My friends won't stand up for me. They're all too worried about making sure their kids have food. And they're just going to comply. Right now, we're talking about violent rioters who went to a small town and burned down buildings. And this was part of a greater movement throughout the year, just mass rioting for Black Lives Matter, that resulted in 25 to 32 dead, depending on which metric you use, and it's horrifying. And now these people are being told that after all the death and destruction of Black Lives Matter, it is Kyle Rittenhouse who is at fault. We've all seen the videos of the people who have been brutalized. You see the video out of Seattle where a guy is running, they knock him down and punt his head. There's another video where a guy runs around with a sword. Not a good idea either, but he certainly decided he's not going to take it, he's not going to drop to his knees in front of these people, and they brutalize him, beating him and leaving him twisted and writhing on the ground. Well, I shouldn't say writhing, completely unconscious. Kyle Rittenhouse went out there and said, I'm going to provide aid to these people, but I'm not going to be a victim. And he was in the long run. He was still, he was attacked and everything. With the National Guard being deployed and being outstanding there, there's no question that the families of the jurors, the friends of the jurors, the old friends who live far away have discussed this with them. And they may not tell a judge that they did, but you'd have to be naive to think they wouldn't. They say the National Guard troops were preparing for action 60 miles north of Kenosha as the world awaits for the verdict in the Kyle Rittenhouse double murder case. So I'll issue a correction. The jurors aren't seeing the National Guard because the National Guard is up doing training. But the friends and family likely are. And they're probably asking him about it. And you know what happens? He says don't discuss the trial, the evidence. Is rioting the trial? No. So juror comes home. 7 women on that jury, I believe. And there's a husband. And he says, honey, they will come for us. I don't care about Kyle Rittenhouse. I care about you. I care about little Timothy over there. Their son. Yeah, John Oliver loves using my name for his bits, whatever. You get the point. People are going to say, I care more about my kid and I care more about my wife than I care about you getting this kid not guilty. He made his bed. Let him rot for all I care. And you know why I believe that? I agree with Michael Malice when he said the average American cares more about safety than freedom. I've seen it. How many people were like, I'll comply with whatever the government says? And how many people have said to me, Tim, I have children. And if I stand up and speak out, my kids won't have food. All right, you're right, but at least they'll have food for now until they go to the gulag. And it's funny because I'm only somewhat kidding. I don't know what they'll call it. Maybe not a gulag. But what'll end up happening is, as we're seeing now with food shortages, labor shortages, businesses collapsing, riots in the streets, yeah, sure. Today, your kid can have their cheeseburger because you shut up and backed down and hid. And the power that you ceded to the extremists will one day come and take what's left of your child's life. Because you decided that a society in which the trees are chopped down, eventually, is better for now, because at least there's shade. They say a society grows great when men plant trees whose shade they know they will never sit beneath. I remember when I was riding my bike across the Manhattan Bridge in New York, and I thought to myself, I did nothing to make this bridge happen. Nothing. I was born into a world where it was already there. And now I can freely travel between Brooklyn and Manhattan. How amazing is that? That there were people who came before me who said, I will plant a tree whose shade I know I will never sit beneath. Today, most people are saying, look, we got a tree. Shut up and sit beneath it before things get bad. And you know what it is? It's the children of those who planted those trees. You see, the people who knew I have to invest in the future and fight for what is right created an environment in which we were all born amidst beautiful shade and resources and luxury. And now we're all spoiled and scared to lose it. And we say, my child basks in the shade of this tree. If I speak up, maybe they'll come and chop this tree down, as they actively chop down the forest. It is time to plant the seeds of a tree whose shade you know you will never sit beneath. It is time to stand up for yourself, speak out, vote these people out, vote at the local level, primary the Republicans, primary the Democrats, force that change. Now, you vote Democrat, fine, I wouldn't. The Libertarian Party, the Free State Project, I don't know. I don't. But I believe what the Free State Project has done has shown us not only are they winning up in New Hampshire, seriously are they winning, but it's possible everywhere else. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Glenn Youngkin winning in Virginia is going to save the country, because he's not that great. But you can see the sentiment changing in people, and our culture is shifting. Regular Americans are saying no to this. They're standing up. They're standing up to the lies of the corporate press and the lies of the Democratic establishment and the neocons, formerly of the Republican Party, who joined them. And they're saying no to the establishment Republicans, and they're primarying them and getting populists in. I don't know what the verdict will be, but it's coming soon. And maybe the verdict will be a colloquial verdict, and that the judge says mistrial with prejudice. We'll see. Tonight at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastIRL, we will be live with more updates, and we'll talk about this with the group. So I'll leave it there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern.